I'm Kirsty Malpass and I'm in the London company of Come From Away, and I'm a standby and I'm the dance captain.
Can you tell me a bit about your background?
Yeah, so in terms of my studying, I did, I suppose, what most girls do when they're younger, and went to dance classes and singing classes and drama all through school, but I never did anything professional. I went to university to do a degree, and then after that, which was in drama, but it was academic, and then I went to drama school for a year, did a postgrad in musical theatre, and then I started working. So done lots of sort of West End, national tours, worked in Germany. There's lots of musicals out in Germany, and yeah, but solely in theatre. I've not done television or film.
And what do you do as a dance captain? What are your main responsibilities?
So it sort of changes as the process goes on. So in the beginning, because I'm learning the show as well, especially a show like this that already existed somewhere else. So we had the associate from Broadway, and actually the associate from Toronto as well, came over to help to teach it. So primarily my job is to take the warm-ups in the mornings to make sure everyone's physically ready. And that carries on then throughout the run. We do a warm-up every day before we do the show. And then it's also my job to learn all of the different tracks so that I can help with understudy rehearsals. It'll be my responsibility to rehearse people in when we do cast changes. And also to sort of keep an eye on the show as we go on. So the associates, the Broadway associates go back to Broadway. The Toronto associate went back a long time ago. We have a London associate, but she only has to watch the show 3 times a week. So the rest of the time it's just me in the building. And so I'll have to sort of sit out and watch it and check that if things have got sloppy, that they need to be cleaned, or notes need to be given. Because, a musical's a very organic thing, and it can grow and breathe in different places. So, and in some ways that's wonderful and that's good and that's encouraged. But if it goes too far off the original concept or the original ideas, you just have to sort of rein it back in every now and again and just make sure that it's still the vision that the original creators wanted.
And how did you become involved with Come From Away?
I just auditioned for it. So I'd heard about it and I knew the music, because obviously it had these pre-existing productions, the original productions, and I knew it was coming over. So I sort of said to my agent, I was like, you have to keep an eye out for this, because it's an amazing show. And I think it's easy to get quite cynical in any business. But once you've worked in a business for a while, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, there aren't many things that really excite you anymore. Well, they're fewer and further between. Every job has amazing things about it and wonderful, beautiful, different things that they bring to you and that you can bring to them. But there's very few projects that now have me sort of chomping at the bit to go, that is what I want to be involved in. That's the show I want to be doing. That's the story I want to be telling. And, almost to the point of saying, I don't care what you offer me. I feel very strongly that I need to be involved in that, and I will do it under any circumstances. So I'd rung my agent and said, you have to make sure that when this comes out that I get seen for it, and she did. And we went through the audition process, and here I am.
And how many characters do you have to play as an understudy?
So, we started in Dublin, and in Dublin, so on stage there's 6 females and 6 males. And when we were in Dublin, we had 2 females and 2 males off stage to cover those roles. So it was 3 each. But in that scenario, you only have 1 spare person for each part. So, the minute, if someone gets sick and you go on, there's no one else in the building then, who can cover that. So in the West End, In a normal show, normally you'd go 2 covers deep, so you'd have a first cover and a second cover. On this we have 3 covers. For a couple of the characters we actually have 4 covers. So we picked up another 2 girls, another 2 boys to be standbys, and between us we cover them all. So of the 6 girls I will cover 5 of them, but the likelihood is I won't have to go on for hopefully 2 of them because I'm the 3rd cover. So it's a really that's like SOS emergency. It has to be, well, I say a lot of people off, it just has to be a particular combination of people has to be off for that to occur. Because also the difference about this show is you can't cut it at all. Most shows, there are ways of cutting a show where someone else will pick up a few lines here or there, or if there's something that needs to be moved or a prop that needs to be done, another member of the cast can sort of take on that responsibility. And I've done shows, what was the worst one I did, we had 19 people off in one show. There were 56 in the cast, we had 19 people off and only 9 off-stage covers, swings those were, to cover those people that were off. So we had a lot of cuts in that show, lots of things that end up not happening. Maybe it's normally quite simple things, like a dance routine that would normally have 10 people in it will have 8 or 6, but this show you can't cut at all. There has to be 12 people on the stage. There's no way of doing it. Everybody's too busy. The storylines are too intricate. You can't. Everybody's already playing multiple roles, so each track will play 2, 3, 4 different characters that they'll do with a change of a jacket or a change of a hat, and there's no way to get around that. So we have to have that depth just in case, so that we can always get a show on, no matter what.
Tell me about the choreography for this show.
Do you say the chairography? Yeah. Chairography. I have nightmares about chairs now. It's very specific. No, it's great, and actually, it's almost, I think, more difficult for the onstage cast who only do their own track. So the track would be that a track is a performer's journey from start to finish of a show. Because they know their own chairs, they know what they do and their own chairs, and that's it. And the more you learn, actually, the easier that it becomes to learn, because you start to see it as a jigsaw that goes together. So we have 14 chairs in the show, and that's pretty much the set. There's 3 tables, and that's it. And everything is created using these chairs. So they'll get changed into an aeroplane or a bus or a bar, or an aeroplane in a different layout, a jumbo as opposed to a smaller aeroplane, or 2 different buses that are riding next to each other. And all the transitions happen in sort of 8 beats of music generally. There's a lot of running around, and often people are having to change their costume as they're doing it, or pass someone else's costume onto them. There's a lot of sort of prop exchanges that happen, and what they've achieved with such simplicity, it's so complicated to do, and it's actually frustrating when you watch it. It looks so effortless, and that's an absolute testament to the creation of the piece and the performers who do it, that it looks really easy, but it's so complicated. But what I love about it is it really takes us back to, I think, how storytelling used to happen. The simplicity of, what do we actually need to tell a story? And the answer is actually very little. Stories historically told around fires, told around sitting around in the living room. And if you can rely on the audience's imagination to fill in those voids, and if you set it up early enough in the piece that that's what's expected of them, I think they're more than willing to go on that journey with you. And then I think actually what happens is they really focus and zone in on the humanity of the story that's being told, because all the other things don't matter that much. I mean, there's there's a place for big musicals with big sets. You know, they're wonderful and vibrant and serve a very different purpose. But there's something that I really love about the simplicity of this and how it all gets drawn back to the bare bones of what is the important thing in storytelling, which is the heart and the truth and the rawness of human experience, which we do on a chair.
And what it's like to be on stage like non-stop?
Yeah, it's quite a big one for that. Because it's an hour and 40 minutes straight through with no interval, and normally you'd at least get a chance to gather your thoughts in the interval. It's challenging as a performer, simply for purely logistical reasons, like if you need to take a bathroom break, that's not going to happen, so you better make sure you've been to the bathroom before the show starts and things like that. But actually, it brings another layer, I think, because the energy, there's no chance for any of the energy to drop or change. It just keeps building and building. And I know that one of the reasons that they decided to not have an interval for this show was because the people of Gander and Gander and Lewisport and all the other towns that all took in these come from aways, they didn't get a break. The planes landed, the people came off the planes, they needed feeding, they needed housing, they needed to be taken care of emotionally as well as logistically, and you know, none of them slept. So I think the idea was that the performers and the audience had a little taste of that, of what that might be like, what that might feel like to not get a break and not get a mental break at any point. So, you know, off the back of that, the scenes move very, very quickly. There's no dead time. The scenes are all quite short as well, so the pace is just snappy all the way through. And yeah, I think it brings a lot. And yeah, it's hard work, but it's worth it.
And what's your schedule like usually?
We're still quite early days, so it's still very intense, especially for the standbys, because we're still trying to learn all of our tracks. So I've done, of my 5, I've now done 3 of them, in terms of having had a dress rehearsal and a put-in. So I've got another 2 to do, and it takes us about a month to do each character. And then, because we had some standbys join late, we'll have another couple of months after that. So at the moment we have a regular show schedule, so Monday to Saturday nights we have shows, and we have Wednesday matinees and Saturday matinees. And then we're in all day Tuesday, all day Thursday rehearsing. And we also, if we're not on, we're often rehearsing while the show's going on. So today we just had a matinee, but the rest of us were upstairs having a music call with our assistant musical director to go over, because each character has their own harmonies, each character, you know, so it's completely different. Every single track has its own very specific journey through the show.
And what's the difference between standby and understudy?
It's a really good question. It's sort of semantics, because there's also a swing. Officially we're standbys. The main difference between a standby and an understudy is an understudy generally is on stage, so they normally have their own ensemble track, and then they would bump up to play the role if the person was unavailable for any reason. A standby doesn't have their own track, so would sit in the dressing room, and a standby would cover a principal role as opposed to an ensemble role. A swing is also generally off stage. You can have on stage swings, but generally are off stage. But they would cover the ensemble tracks. Normally, what happens is a standby, you'd only cover one part. So the sort of famous shows for that are the ones that have very, very taxing roles. So, you know, things like in Wicked, your Elphabas and your Glindas have standbys. Anything where there's, you know, it's usually when there's one character who does a lot all the way through. so normally a standby would only cover one, an understudy would cover one or two or three maybe, but would have their own on-stage track. A swing can cover, I mean, I've heard horror stories of swings covering up to like 20 tracks, but it's normally about 8, between 8 and 10, generally I'd say in a big musical. So weirdly, we're standbys, but we're sort of swings at the same time because we're doing multiple things. And also because of the way this show works and because of the way it's created, it's so specific, and the whole thing almost is like a dance, that it, in a lot of ways, it aligns itself more to being a swing in terms of the amount of information that you need to retain for each track. But then equally, because essentially of the 12 characters on stage, they are all principals. They are simultaneously principals and an ensemble. And I think it's one of the only shows I can think of that has that sort of setup. They also need standbys or swings, whatever you want to call them, who are of a calibre that when they go on stage, they can be a principal, they can hold the stage on their own. Swings generally wouldn't have any dialogue, they wouldn't have any, they'd only do choral singing. So yeah, it's sort of all tied up in semantics, but I think it's a testament to this show that everybody does want to be involved, and actually the calibre of people involved reflects that, because I think a lot of people who wouldn't normally sit off stage wanted so desperately to be involved in this that they made an exception.
And do standbys normally get paid more than swings or understudies?
It all depends, because it's all linked to what everybody else is earning. So because swings cover the ensemble, the way it works is a swing would be on the same as the ensemble basic rate plus a swing fee, which is a weekly fee, which covers, but then they don't get paid when they go on. So a swing could be on all 8 shows and their pay packet wouldn't change, because their swing fee reflects the fact that they can go on anytime. An understudy would be also on the ensemble basic, and then they'd be on a responsibility fee for any specific characters that they understudied, and then they'd get a performance fee each time they go on. And then for standbys, we get a basic fee, and then we get a bump up whenever we go on. So, but I'm not sure there's any specific rules in equity that cover standbys, because they're quite rare. So I think actually not sure of the answer to that question, if I'm honest.
Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Crikey. I mean, I could go on forever about how much I love the show. I love the fact that musicians come on stage with us. I've done some sort of actor musician work, and I love this idea that we can, and again coming back to the original way that we would tell stories as a culture and as a community, is how intrinsic music can be to things. And I hate that I don't hate it, I mean I love listening to an orchestra, but that in sort of standard musical theatre there's such a divide. The musicians, sometimes you never see them, they're down in the pit. As a cast member you don't get to really see them except for when you tick in and tick out at stage door. And I love that here the guys are they're in sort of the fringes of the stage the whole time anyway, in terms of where their stations are, but then there's certain numbers where they come out and they're part of that storytelling experience. And especially given the sort of Celtic history that's linked to Newfoundland, and that for them is so intrinsic to their way of life and their way of communication and how people bond. And it's I think it's a really nice reflection of that, and we just love having, I mean we've got such talented musicians in the show, they're insane, and it's amazing having them on stage with us. So.
And what was it like to meet real people from Gander?
Oh my god, amazing. Just, they're so lovely and so welcoming. And I met, I mean, she's not from Gander, but Beverly Bass, who was the pilot, because a lot of them came to our Dublin opening, and they're coming to the London opening as well. And I just remember I actually went to school in America when I was little, and there was an area in the library that you weren't allowed to go into until you were in 4th grade. I don't know why, it was arbitrary. I was like, why would you stop kids from getting books that they want to read? But it was the biography section, and I really wanted to read. There was a whole raft of female biographies. There was like Florence Nightingale, and the one I really wanted to read was Amelia Earhart, who famous pilot, as you know. And I had to fight to be allowed to go a year early into this section to check this book out. And it was just such an inspiring story, and for me, Beverly Bass is like a continuation of that story of all the things that Amelia Earhart fought for back then. And now look, we're living in a world where she was the first female American pilot for American Airlines, had a completely female crew, and, you know, worked right through and was obviously caught up in that crazy day. And she's a very inspiring woman.
What advice would you give to anyone who is interested in this career?
You have to work hard. I think you have to work hard in any career. But I mean, everyone says it, and I sort of hate to say it because it's a cliche, but it is kind of true. But if you can see yourself doing anything else, you should be doing that. Because I think there's so many ups and downs in our industry, and it's so fickle. There's no ladder to climb. There's no, oh, because you've done one thing, you'll automatically be at that level or above on your next show. Everything is, you know, taken on its own. Each show has to be taken on its own merits in each part. Excuse me. And I think unless it's the only thing that you can see yourself doing it, and unless you truly adore it, you just won't be happy. And I've been really fortunate to have, you know, the career that I've had. And it's as much, I think, about professionality as it is about any level of talent that you may have. You know, it's incredibly important to be the sort of person that people want to have in the room. You know, be the person who gets your head down and does the work and doesn't create drama. We've got enough of that in this world and this industry. And yeah, I think if you want it and you work hard. There's also a lot of people I know who are incredibly talented and who work very hard and haven't had the breaks. So it's a very unjust system, but it's incredibly rewarding.
And how do you find an agent? Can you work on West End without an agent?
You can. It's difficult. They used to do. There used to be a rule where they had to do open auditions for every show, which meant that people would line up in the street, go in and sing their 16 bars, which always gave people an opportunity. They don't tend to do those so much anymore. They're occasionally they do come around, but there's no legal obligation for them to do that anymore. If you've been working in the industry for a while, I think you could work in the West End without an agent, but you'd have to be very proactive, because the way it works is if they're putting on a new show, producers would go to a casting director and put a breakdown out of, okay, we need 20 people, we need 10 girls, 10 guys, 2 of the guys need to be over 6 foot, 2 of the guys need to be, they'll go through and they'll give all of the physical qualities that they need, the vocal qualities they need, the skill set they need, and that gets sent out to the agents, and then the agents see if they've got anyone on their books. So if you don't have an agent, how you would get onto that casting mail out, you'd have to be sort of in touch with the casting directors a lot, I think, to try to keep yourself in their mind. And they're not massively open to that, because obviously the system works for them, because they can just, it trickles down, because if the casting agents had to deal with us all directly. I mean, they just couldn't. It's too much work. But I got my agent out of my showcase that I did after drama school. So the year that I did at drama school was leading up to a professional showcase where the drama school invited all of the agents, and then you sort of hope for an offer out of that. And I've actually been with the same agent ever since, which is very, very rare, but I'm very happy and they're great. So I definitely lucked out on that front. But it's doable, but it would be tricky. Certainly starting out, I think, would be very difficult.
Anything else?
No, that's it from me.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.